Good morning, sense of things. It's Jeff and Ron here, kicking off another week in the summer. It is ungodly hot here in Texas. I'm sure it's very warm in Arizona as well, Ron.
It is, but I got to tell you, I love the mornings. It's typically 30 to 40 degrees difference in the wee hours of the morning and top of night. But yeah, it's going to get a little steamy here soon. Who knows? It's all
We've
right.
been
By
like,
you, I couldn't do it. The humidity. We talked about that.
oh God, yeah.
Right.
Last night we had a rainstorm. We had the hottest day ever on record in Texas, or at least in our part of Texas, as far as the heat index. I think we were at like 119 degrees yesterday
Uh,
in heat index, and then it decides last night that it's going to rain, and literally we're thinking, hey, rain, it's going to be cooler.
got
We walked
muggy.
outside. Literally, I walked outside with a knife and had to cut my way through the air to get outside last night. But it
Yeah.
was a little cooler in the morning, so a little cooler was like 80 degrees this morning, so
Yeah. But when it's that muggy and whatever, it doesn't matter what the temperature is.
it's miserable.
Yeah.
So
By the time you get to your car and then from your car to the office, you feel like you need a shower.
it's exactly right. Yeah, we've been on the go out, do a little bit of stuff outside, come inside, take a shower again. So like 2, 3 showers a day right now, and then you can't dry off afterwards. Hey, I wanted to kick things off today. And one of the things I noticed this week as far as just economic things was the price of used cars. And I typically buy used cars, I don't buy new. And prices have come down pretty significantly. And I started thinking about like the first car I bought when I was a youngin', and the prices today are just so off the charts. I think I paid maybe $1,000 for my first truck, which was a 1966 Ford F100,
Wow.
the T-Bird 390 in it.
How
So
about that? I was a junior in high school, got a 77 Grand Prix, two-tone,
nice.
white outside and army green inside, don't laugh,
Oh,
with bench seats. And I think it was $1,250. And I was
nice.
so excited because it just had the old AM FM radio. I put in, it wasn't a Blaupunk, it wasn't an Alpine, but it was a really nice stereo. The stereo was $200.
Nice.
Now, it never got stolen as a lot of those did get back in the day, but here it is. The stereo was $200 on crappy speakers, and the car only paid $1,250 for it.
Yes, but I think for you, actually for both of us, we were paying by the poundage, which was good. If you factored in the poundage of the cars, yeah, you actually got a pretty good deal.
Here's the quick funny thing. I can't remember what the price of a gallon of gas was at the time, but I remember whether it was school or during the summer, I'm like, damn, it's costing me 20, $25 a week to fill this thing up. I remember, I'm like, my God, that's a lot. That's 4 hours of work.
Well,
I got to pay
and
for
the beauty
gas.
of it is that car probably had a 400 motor,
It actually
350
was,
or
I think, a
400.
305.
Yeah.
It was a long car, but the engine wasn't as powerful as you might think by
Well,
looking.
yeah, but it was like a 305 and 150 horsepower or something like that.
Yeah.
That was the funny part of that time period. Yeah, like I said, I bought vehicle. Actually, my dad traded a car he had. So he had a 19, I think 67 Austin Healey Sprite, which was going to be my first car. The only problem with it was literally, okay, this is a car built for the British Isles. If you drove over a puddle in the road, the thing would just crap out and die. So it had just the worst electrical system that had ever existed in a car. And the fact that I'm 6'3" in a car that is literally 6'3" long was
Needed a
just not
can
going to
opener
work.
to get out of that.
Yeah, exactly. So I got the F100 1966. It was probably about 7,000, 8,000 pounds with a T-Bird 390 motor in it.
Great gas mileage.
Oh yeah, I would get like at least 2 miles to the gallon if I was lucky. And the one good thing is it had a granny gear that I could literally pull a stump out of the ground with.
Okay, there
It
you
was a
go.
very useful vehicle from that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Those were
Well,
the days. Those were the days.
it was fun, yeah, when gas was like 82 cents or something like that, and it still took I was putting my $5 a time filling up because you had no money back then.
Yeah.
Cool. This week, it was an interesting week, I guess, from my perspective. We were talking pre-show, and one of the things that was interesting is housing starts just off the freaking charts. They were up like 27% year over year. But then you look at existing home sales and they're down 20%. I think people are just not ready to, people that have those 2 and 3% loans are just not moved at this point.
But also, you know what? I don't know. I probably want to look a little deeper at that number compared to
Yeah.
last year because I sold a house June of last year. And I remember the real estate agent talking to me about really good timing because price reductions and supply on the market literally plummeted in
Mm,
May and June of last year.
yeah.
So as we are cresting back up again, I wonder how easy it was to beat that number a year ago when things were completely grinding to a halt.
Yeah.
But like you said, people that are in houses aren't leaving because of the higher mortgage rates. But how many of those housing starts are sold houses versus spec? Don't know.
Who knows? Once again, I always look at it from my perspective, and there's a new neighborhood that's being built. I live in Austin, so we're a major area that people are coming into. And this neighborhood, they built a ton of houses at the beginning and then just stopped. It was just absolutely no houses built after that. And I just noticed, like in the last month or two, that they've picked up the pace again and they're building like crazy. So I think something has happened. I think a lot of people were holding off on buying a house because it was like, oh, interest rates are so high. And I think a lot of these builders, from my perspective and talking to realtor friends, a lot of these builders have a lot of flexibility in how they can finance it and how they can build the pricing out, where it's making it more attractive for people to find a brand new home in these.
I'll give you something that going through the process I thought was very interesting. Looking into an ARM,
Okay.
figuring rates are going to come down anyway in the next 3 to 4 years, right? Never heard of this before. And a couple of the mortgage people and people I know in the industry, I've never seen this before either. ARM rates are higher than fixed rates. The banks ain't stupid.
No.
They know, wait a minute, why would I give them an ARM rate? I got to make the money now. And then
Yep.
they're going to sell the paper in the next 18 to 24 months. They ain't going to hold on to it when rates get cut in half for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Which, yeah, it's never happened in my experience. It's always been,
ARM rates are higher than fixed rates.
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Again, the consumer gets the short end of the stick there
Of
too.
course. Yeah. But at least they're paying you 0.5 on your savings.
Oh yeah.
That
Got to look into that, laddering out that treasury
let,
strategy.
let's once again.
I hear. I thought it was interesting too. Like markets down a little bit today. We 3 straight days of down from a parabolic move. We needed some exhaustion in there, but I thought it was interesting. These business networks and sites, they got to get you to either watch or read or clickbait or whatever you want to call it. And I
Mhm.
loved how they said a good part of the market pullback over those 3 days was worries of slow China recovery. You got to be kidding me. Look, they've been reopened for several months after a shutdown. All of a sudden now, mid-June,
Now we're worried.
that's your narrative? It's just crazy. The other thing I thought was interesting, and I was paying attention and I maybe lost track or I didn't hear about it for a while. I think one of the other parts to the thesis you and I are talking about with a pullback in the second half of the year, the student loan moratorium is up at the end of August.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I thought it ended last year along with the rental and the mortgage moratorium.
No.
Why we waited another year on the student loan moratorium, I don't know. But we've talked about this several times. I'm not going to beat it to death about the credit card balances breaching the $1 billion level. How many of those people that have high credit card balances also have student debt that they
Yeah.
haven't been paying for the last 3+ years? So now all of a sudden they're going to be forced to pay bankruptcy. I'm telling you, being a bankruptcy attorney in the next 3 to 5 years, you'll be able to retire afterwards.
Yeah.
You could set up an assembly line process because these 20, 30, and 40 somethings that accumulated all this debt and still paying it off and have high credit card balances, something's got to give.
Well, and
And
I mean,
bankruptcy isn't going to discharge that credit card debt or the
yeah, yeah,
student loan debt.
yeah. The student loan side of it, I heard a statistic the other day on one of the business networks, and it works out to be like $300 to $400 a month on average
I
for,
heard 250 to 300, but I wouldn't
yeah.
doubt if it was 3 to 4.
Yeah. All right. If you're tight as it is, you've got a lot of credit card debt, and now all of a sudden you're going to have $300 popped onto your monthly bills. I think a lot of people are going to be in a tough shape. I think it'll also get some of these people who have been not working or kind of half-ass working, doing stuff in the gig economy and stuff like that. It
Yeah.
may get them off their butts to get a real job at that point.
I
But
think we know the answer to that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe
But
not.
I thought the other thing too from was it 2, 3 weeks ago, we saw a spike in small business bankruptcy
Yeah,
filings over the last 60 days.
yeah.
I wonder how much of those coincide with each other. I'm not really sure. But I thought the other interesting thing too was because Powell's been doing testimony yesterday and today after pausing last week and stating last week and reiterating yesterday and today. And I know we talked about this, and I said we got 1 to 2 more coming.
Mhm.
And what did he did say more than half the committee, 2/3 of the committee says, yeah, 1 to 2 more rate hikes.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting. Just in the last 24 hours, 4 countries raised interest rates.
Mhm.
Bank of England, Norway, Turkey, and Switzerland
Yeah.
all raised rates in the last 24 hours. What is that telling you about contagion across the world?
Mhm.
With inflation, economic cycle, boom and bust out of the COVID, I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, and they're not gonna stop. They're in the same kind of situation. England, I know when we were over there just recently in February, it was prices were down from the last time we had been over there, but you could see they were on the rise, and certainly from the energy perspective for them, that was like the biggest concern. That was
Right.
the news that they talked about. The fortunate thing for them, and I think most of Europe, was that it was actually a really mild winter over there.
Which they got lucky because they've been cutting off Russian oil
Yeah.
since last year.
Yeah, it been a bad winter, it would have been ugly over there. From that perspective, I think there would have been a lot of people that would have been in a really hard condition. And looking at it from their perspective, they tend to be a little bit more socialistic about things. And all on the news was like subsidies for heating and oil and everything else. And it was an interesting take being over there and seeing all that.
Oh, I agree. I agree. So, I got a couple of slides I want to
Yeah.
go through for some conversation fodder. What are your thoughts on for the rest of this summer going into September? I know we talked about the moratorium ending at the end of August, and obviously we've seen hospitality, high bookings hotels, high bookings airlines for the summer.
Yeah.
People want to get out. I don't know if this is get your Gatsby on moment. People got their last hurrah this summer to prepare for a recession in the last third of the year. What are your thoughts?
I think my take on it is a little bit different now. I'm been looking at, one thing I always look at is leading economic indicators,
Yeah.
and from I haven't looked at them today because they just or they're hitting it. I think they just hit an hour ago, so I haven't even had a chance to really dig into them a little bit. But I think leading economic indicators have been showing it they've been indicating a recession, but we haven't hit it with the GDP side of it yet. The GDP side hasn't shown it yet. So that would not indicate that we're in a recession yet. So I keep starting to think that may end up being pushed off until early 2024 at this
Possible.
point. I'm starting to see a few little green shoots of things that are pushing us along. Now, I think the biggest thing for me is I honestly think this whole moratorium on student loan debt, I think is going to have a massive effect if they don't push it down the road again. And that's the problem is now you've pushed it into August and the I think the biggest thing that's going to come out of this is probably in the next couple of weeks we're going to hear from the Supreme Court on whether or not the student loan forgiveness thing
Yeah.
is going to work. And so that's
And
kind of
that's
a
only
double
for up to
whammy.
$10,000.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
Yeah,
for
it's
some of these
really
people, that's a pimple.
yeah, exactly. And I talk to people all the time that have hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, and they're not even doctors. These are people that got a degree in education or something. But okay, so they've had this kind of moratorium for almost 3 years now. And then if you turn around and the Supreme Court votes down, which I think they probably will, quite frankly, I don't see how it can ever be legal because I went into the military and got my college basically paid for, and I paid for the rest out of pocket. My wife didn't go to college. So why would we be responsible for paying for somebody who went to college and who should have a better education and
Yeah.
be able to
Well,
make
I didn't
their
pay
living?
attention to it, but we raised the debt ceiling.
Yeah,
So if we're going to pay $10,000 to remove debt for X amount of people, I don't even know how many billions this comes out to. Doesn't
trillions.
that affect our budget? How do you budget that? How did they think about including that in the debt ceiling numbers? Look,
I don't think
you know,
they
it's
did.
politics at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's all funny math as long as we got the printing press. Don't know how it's going to happen.
Yeah. And like I said, I think the biggest effect is going to be if you see now we're going to put that down. Okay, great. I don't think they can push it off again. At some point, people are going to have to start paying again. Now, the political will
Yeah.
for that coming into an election season and going into an election, the pretty big major election with a president and a lot of senators this next time, the political will of saying, okay, we're going to make people actually start paying on their student loans again. It's going to be interesting to see. And I mean, that could have a pretty major effect because it's going to affect what's really been keeping the economy afloat, which has been continual spending,
Yeah.
and like I said, a lot of it is not as
Consumer's
much,
hot.
yeah, but less and less on goods and services and more on what you were saying before on trips and all that type of stuff. When does that end? When do people go, okay, I've
Labor Day.
done it? Yeah, it ends Labor Day and they actually have to get back to work at that point. And then how's that going to trickle down throughout the rest of the
And
economy?
I'm actually thinking mid-August because I think you have it there in Texas. We have it here in the Southwest right now. Kids go back to school mid-August.
Yeah.
So summer vacation's over for a good chunk of the country by mid-August.
Yeah.
So we'll,
Yeah, because ours we get out a little bit earlier than I guess the
yeah,
rest of the
mid-May.
world, and yeah, mid-May, and we're back August now, which I always remembered it being around Labor Day, and now it just seems like it's earlier and earlier every year.
Growing up in the Northeast, the first day of school forever was the Wednesday following Labor Day. That's the way it was forever. Then they moved it to the week before, which I have no idea. Part of that had to do, I'm sure, with winters and snow days. And I know with the Southwest and where you are, they want people out in mid-May because it cuts back on the air conditioning
Yep.
for the really hot month. I get all that. I get all that. But you just never know. But circling back, a couple of things we talked about on and off in podcast was not just the breadth of the market,
Yeah.
but really like the top 7 to 10 stocks in the S&P and the weightings. And there was something very interesting I saw in a couple of different programs. And there's this one analyst. I'm going to share my screen here. I thought this was pretty interesting. And I always like to cite sources. Good artists create, great artists steal. So we're going to borrow this one for a little bit. But I thought this was interesting looking at some of the really nice bull markets in the last 5-6 years and how many stocks were participating in that run of the S&P 500. And if this isn't like one of the most look, liars figure and figures lie. I can't ignore these facts
No.
that only about 7 stocks are making up 1% of the overall move this year compared to, if you look at it, even 2020, because that's a bit of an anomaly with half the year being in shutdown, basically. But if you just take a look at it, traditionally, you need a chunk of the stocks to help lift the market altogether to be a healthy move. All we've seen so far this year, and definitely in the last 30 to 45 days, is 7 stocks going parabolic.
Yeah. Which is insane.
And again, I love his comment down there. It's not a normal bull market.
Yeah, exactly. Which that you start to look at, okay, when those things reach a point where, all right, we're going to switch out, good and bad. It could be that we start to see people scatter out into other stocks. I have seen a little bit more breadth in the market lately
Yes.
as I look down into it a little bit. So you're starting to see a little bit more breadth expand out. But we've had a really good run this year. and it's been 7 stocks. Is it that people start to adjust out of those? I don't really necessarily see it because a lot of those are really old
If you
performing
notice, the
stocks.
pullback in the last 4 days has, believe it or not, a lot of it's been concentrated in those top 7 to 10 stocks.
Makes sense. Yeah,
It's just buyer exhaustion at that point and
yeah,
way too much air under that in that balloon. So we'll have to
exactly.
see. But
So
kind of
it'll be
following,
interesting to see
yeah,
if that money moves around a little bit into some of the other stocks that are the next tier down or
we're undervalued. Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Following up on a couple topics we discussed in our podcast in the past, we were talking about AI and the jobs that AI is going to replace. And I thought that this was interesting. How often do you go into a fast food restaurant, McDonald's, Panera, you name the restaurant, and here's your self service? Yep. Fill it out. So it's interesting that cash. Okay, great. So people don't want jobs as a cashier. Okay, I get it.
Okay,
You can do
fine,
it
we'll
on your
just
phone.
remove
You
those
can go in
jobs.
and hit a kiosk.
Ah,
But look how it's going down. I'd like to know how the fast food, how AI is going to replace a fast food cook.
yes. Uh, I
They're
could
going to
see
have
maybe
robots. I mean,
robotics.
what's
Yeah,
happening there? I
but yeah,
understand. I look, you could justify everything else that's in there,
yeah.
and certainly accounting to a certain extent. You still got to input information, but it's like, how is AI going to replace truck drivers? Right?
Mhm.
We know there's going to be automation driving. Okay, but are they going to get robots to cook food?
Yeah. Which there are some places, there are some pizza places that actually use robotics now. It was actually one I think was started here in Austin that's a completely robotic pizza place. And it works.
Okay,
It's an interesting I think it's an interesting use of AI. I would say it's more robotics than AI. Fast food
sure.
cooks, I think it would be more robotics than AI because what overall thought, the whole idea of fast food is it's a very systematized system. So I think if you could figure out a way to systematize that, from a robotic standpoint, the cashiers, I said that years ago. I remember going into Panera Bread and they were the first ones I can remember
Yeah.
had a kiosk. And it's hilarious. I even find myself today when I go to Panera or any of those, if there's a kiosk there, I'm like, I'm just going to go to that. I don't even want to talk to a human at this point. And the problem is, if you look at all these positions that are there, they're typically the lower income jobs
The lower
that
hourly wage.
are going to be eliminated or going to be the fastest shrinking. Where are people going to work that don't have don't have any kind of major training? So we're assuming that people are going to, okay, they're going to get some kind of education that gets them to a better paying job. But the reality is not a lot of people are doing that.
No.
No.
So it's interesting to see how this will evolve.
Yeah.
They're saying over the next 8 years this will happen, and we've already seen the trend. But certainly this is the direction it's going. But I am curious to see what's going to replace the fast food cooks.
Yeah.
And here was something interesting. I swiped off of LinkedIn. I saw several people posting this, and I actually got someone trying to scam me on a wire fraud email,
Hmm.
and went back to the bank, and it wasn't this what I have up on the screen. It was something different that looked like an email from the bank. But I thought this was just very interesting. If you just take a look at the A in both of these,
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
Hmm.
And this, I think, came out of Citibank, that the bottom one is actually the fraud,
Yeah.
taking you to a website that is similar but not the same. And obviously, all these websites are hosted offshore, but the average person that's not paying attention and gets a million emails a day is clicking on crap.
Yeah.
And you don't know what is being deposited into your CPU or whatever else that they're going to have access to, which is just another reason why I advise clients and friends, don't put banking apps on your phones. I got other stories we could share some other time, but at the end of the day, I just try and explain to people. I said, look, there's been people that have been scammed with Bitcoin and other things
Hmm.
because they hacked their phone, not the servers at the banks.
Yeah.
And then
Phone
the banks have
and
no recourse because they say, well, if they would have hacked our server, we'd be responsible. We can't be responsible if somebody hacked your phone.
yeah. And interesting enough, on the news last night, they had a older couple on that got scammed And this was probably the most elaborate scam I think I've ever heard. They hacked into the iPad, which everybody talks about how, oh, Apple's, it's got all these security features and all this. So they hacked into their iPad, got something up on the iPad that said, "Hey, somebody has used your Apple account to purchase a whole bunch of stuff." So they call this number, and then the number's, "Oh, you," and somehow they knew that they had Wells Fargo. So somehow they had hacked into this thing. They knew they had Wells Fargo. So they're like, we need to get you in contact with somebody at Wells Fargo to talk about this. So they get them in contact with the people or this person at Wells
Yeah.
Fargo. And then becomes, oh, somehow they've hacked your social security number. So we're going to get you in contact with the Department of Justice. This was like
I
ungodly.
believed all that.
It's okay. So they take, and so what ended up happening is they had them go, they're like, we need you to move your money out of Wells Fargo, which that should tell
You
you
would
right
think that
there.
a smart people would just go down to the local branch and talk to someone.
Or just say, hey, I'm going to hang up and I'm going to call Wells Fargo directly, which is what she was like. Yeah, we should have done this. We realized it. But they basically told them to go to a local, like a bodega type place.
Yeah.
And there's a Bitcoin machine there, and to withdraw from their main account and move it into this Bitcoin account, which was going to protect their money. And of course, then it all disappeared or whatever. But I mean, it's just
Unbelievable.
how insanely elaborate some of these things are. And what I would tell people is never, ever, if it's anything financial, anything, if you get a text, if you get an email that says, hey, click on this, don't click on it. Go in and actually go to the site, because if there's some kind of an alert on your account, if you go to citibank.com or if you go to Capital One or whatever, there'll be some kind of an alert that pops up on your screen once you log into that account. But don't ever click on a link directly from that goes to a website or something like that, like to a Citibank or something.
Now you're getting text, very similar stuff. Yeah, people, especially today, look, I just showed you that one thing, which actually it fooled me when I first read it
Yeah,
until you got the explanation. But yeah, people just got to be extra
but that's
careful. And
absolutely
actually, it's
true.
not even a cybersecurity thing.
Yep.
It's not a virus.
No,
And you're getting this message and something, but think about it. This is how smart these people are. You figure they'd use their knowledge for good, not bad. They send that thing out to 1 million and 10 people do it.
it
Even
doesn't take much.
100,000, 10 people do it.
Yeah,
Still paid for whatever the hell it cost them to initiate it. And if
yeah.
they're offshore, they're not going to get caught.
Yeah, there's no chance they're going to be caught. Yeah, that it took me a second to realize that, and then I realized, oh, the A's are different in those cases, and it's from the Cyrillic alphabet, which is
And how many people actually are reading that going, oh, wait a minute, the A's different here. I don't think this is really Citibank. Come
yeah,
on.
yeah,
Anybody could get fooled. I don't care who you are.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing, is just be super, super careful in this world. And if it seems something weird, I get them all the time, like from Wells Fargo, and I'm like, I've never had an account with Wells Fargo ever. Why would
Right.
I ever click on this link that's in here? I just ignore those and get rid of them at that point. But I
Yeah.
think you just got to be really super careful. You got to pay attention to where something came from. One of the easiest ways to do it too is to just hover up, especially if it comes in, it says Citibank customer service or something like that. Just hover over that link and you'll see what the actual email is. And a lot of times that's where you'll see like blah 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 dot ru, which is Russian at that point.
Right.
Certainly make sure that that type of stuff you got to be very super careful with.
Yeah. I try and advise or recommend certain things to clients with all that stuff, but as much as you can do, it doesn't matter. Somebody's going to find a way to deceive you.
Yeah,
It's unfortunate with all that stuff. You just got to be careful.
absolutely. And like I said, I think we can cover this on another time. I actually wrote a book on identity theft, and I think the fraud stuff is terrible. The identity theft stuff is absolutely heinous, and
Yeah.
it's something that people really need to be very careful with
Yeah.
from the identity theft side. So we'll save that for another one. Like I said, it's midsummer, so there's not a whole lot of data coming out. I think it's going to be an interesting summer. It's not like we talked about last week. It's not our summers when we were growing up in this industry. everybody kind of left. So you had a lot more volatility, but there's so much more trading that's happening electronically now that the market just keeps going without the humans being involved in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think after July 4th, I think that's when the volatility will pick up and we'll see what happens in August. But I think between now and July 4th, I think it'll be relatively quiet. Little up and down, range bound. I don't think we're going to go. I'm not saying we couldn't go higher, but I can't believe we're going to go much higher from here after we're taking a breather. I still think there's a mean reversion that we have to hit at least at the breakout level, maybe close to 4,200 or 4,250 on the S&P. I think we need to get down there. But if we go below 4,200 with some meaningful volume, I think that would be the pullback that I think we've all been talking about for a
Yeah,
while. But I don't think we're going to get that for a little bit.
absolutely. All right, man. Good stuff this week. And folks, we do this for you. So would love some comments. If you liked it, there's things you want to hear, please leave us some comments and make sure you subscribe to the channel. The reason is that's how, as you subscribe, it's how we get this information out more to more folks as well. And we get noticed by YouTube. So thanks a lot for listening, and we will see you guys back here next week.